So we're continuing Parshas Naso, and in this Parsha, it's almost like a continuation from the previous portion of Bamidbar of counting the Jewish people. We're reading about the commandment to count the tribe of Levi in the desert. And the tribe of Levi is divided into three parts, three sub-tribes. There is the family of Kohas, there is the family of Gershon, there is the family of Merari. In each three of these sub-tribes are counted individually. And when the Torah tells us about the details, about when Gershon is counted, when the census is taken, the Torah says something unique by the tribe of Gershon that it does not say with regard to counting Merari or Kahas, the other two sub-tribes. And that is counting the tribe of Gershon al pi Aharon, according to Aharon, based on the mouth of Aharon, literally speaking. In other words, the counting wasn't done solely by Moses, by Moshe Rabbeinu. It was also done by Aharon. That's not the case when it comes to Kahas. That's not the case when it comes to Merari. I guess for some reason, the tribe of Gershon needed Aharon's extra watch, extra care in getting their census taken. Why did Aharon have to get involved with the counting of Gershon, but not with Merari, not with Kohas? In Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe provides this whole spiritual and really personal paradigm in how we understand the Parsha. If you read just the literal text, it sounds like the Torah is telling us the history of what took place. But that's not just what the Torah is. In fact, that's primarily what the Torah isn't. The Torah is primarily not history, but instruction. There's personal instruction, personal significance. The reason why we spend so much time throughout the Torah, probably the majority of portions center around, I shouldn't say majority, but a big chunk of the Torah, of the 5 books of Moses, center around discussing what we did in the desert, camped with a tabernacle, a home for God. Because the whole purpose of being in the desert was to take that tabernacle with us, that home for God, and be present with it in the desert to make God more present in the desert. Because the desert is this idea of desolates, this of emptiness, a place where people don't reside, and spiritually a place where God is unlikely to thrive. And over there, God says you're going to spend the next 40 years camping around, going from place to place in the desert, making my presence known. That's the spiritual, Kabbalistic dynamic of why we spent 40 years in the desert. It wasn't just a punishment, but we actually had a job to do. We had a mission, and we can't settle. We can't go into the land of Israel until we're done with our mission, until we're done illuminating the spiritual darkness of the desert. And every detail in the Mishkan that had to do with the tabernacle is relevant to our personal lives, you and me, you watching this video, in illuminating what may feel like a desert around you. Sometimes we feel that we're in a desert. We feel that we're in this place where there is just no opportunity for spirituality to thrive. People aren't interested. People are distracted. People, whatever it is, we just feel like it just can't thrive. And we have this obligation to build a tabernacle. We have to build, metaphorically speaking, we have to build within our own hearts a place where God can reside. And we do that through prayer, and we do that through studying Torah, we do that through mitzvahs. And sometimes we have to take that tabernacle down and rebuild it in another location. Sometimes we have to move spaces. Sometimes where we are right now has enough light, and we have to go somewhere else and share that light elsewhere. And the job of Gershon, metaphorically, you know what the word Gershon means, that tribe? The word Gershon means to drive out. When one gets divorced, it's called gerushin. Divorce means gerushin, to separate. The job of Gershon is to drive out negativity, to separate negativity from positivity. When we reframe from negativity, when we turn away from evil, when we try to avoid sin, that is the spiritual service of Gershon that is being counted. In fact, what would Gershon do? The subtribe of the Levi tribe of Gershon, what would they do? They were responsible for carrying the tapestries and curtains, the most external part of the Mizbeach. The other tribes, Kahas and Merari, respectively, were responsible for carrying the various vessels, whether it be the altar or menorah or candelabra and other utensils. Merari was responsible for carrying the beams, and the tribe of Gershon were responsible for carrying the curtains and tapestries. You know what tapestries are? The hides, the skins that they would weave beautifully together on various wools and linens, and it represents protection. Gershon is protecting us from evil. When we're trying to avoid and look away and stay away from things that we should be, even when it's difficult, that's Gershon. In general, on a broader sense, the tribe of Levi represents discipline, Gevurah. And Gershon is almost like the epitome of Gevurah, the epitome of discipline, the epitome of what Levi really represents, which is I'm so disciplined, I'm driving out negativity from my life, and that's represented by them being responsible to carry the curtains. They're the ones who are responsible to carry this protection in the desert together with the Jewish people, help the Jewish people stay protected. And when we employ that mindset, we're acting like Gershon. However, it's important to do this safely and correctly. One could be so obsessive about trying to avoid sin that they end up serving sin. And that's not a good thing either. Obviously, it's always good to not sin, but that can't be everything. It has to be al pi Aharon. Gershon is counted, the census is taken according to Aharon. Well, who's Aharon? The Kohen tribe. And Aharon is the epitome of love. Pirkei Avos says we should all be students of Aharon. We should all learn to love people like Aharon did. Aharon was the type of person that loved building relationships together, building people together, bringing people together. And he had bequeathed this trait to all of his descendants. When a Kohen gives us the priestly blessings, the bracha they recite beforehand is they have a commandment from God, Lavarech es Amo Yisrael. They have to bless the Jewish nation be'ahava, with love. To the extent that if a Kohen has animosity towards somebody, he should not be offering those blessings. He's doing it disingenuously, because in order to be a real channel from God, to channel those blessings from God to people, he has to actually love people. Gershon's job is to protect the Jewish people from sin. That's the mindset within our own selves, is us protecting ourselves and each other from sin and avoiding sin. But how do we do that? How do we stay away from the Yetzer Hara? How do we stay away from negative influences, from negative feelings? How do we stay away from depressive feelings? How do we stay away from this compulsion that we often have to stir things up, especially when it's a lot of fun, or to say things that might be hurtful when it's fun? How do we do that? And the answer is al pi Aharon. We do this based on the instruction of Aharon. We do it with love. We have to do sur meira. We have to refrain from evil, from negativity, but through asay tov, through love, through positivity. The Gemara in Maseches Brachos says, La'olam yargiz adam yetzer tov al yetzer hara. A person should always get their yetzer tov, their good inclination, angry and infuriated at the negative impulse, at the negative inclination, at the yetzer hara. And what that's usually meant to understand, the way that's usually understood, is we need to kind of rile ourselves up at the Yetzer Hara, because if we're angry at it, we won't listen to it. But the Alter Rebbe in Torah has a different explanation. It doesn't say you should get angry at the Yetzer Hara. It says get the Yetzer Toiv angry at the Yetzer Hara. Get the good inclination angry at the bad inclination. Well, how do you do that? By making it more connected to God. Because the more it's passionate about God, the more it's in love with God, the more it's in love with its mission, its purpose, its meaning in life, the more it's connected to what it should be, the more it will feel disconnected to what it shouldn't be. So rather than focusing on what it should disconnect from, focus on what it should connect to. So the job of Gershon is driving out the negativity, having those curtains of protection and saving us from negativity. But how do we do that? We do that al pi Aharon, according to Aharon. We do that with love. The way we reframe from negativity, from sadness, from depression, from anxiety, the way we refrain from the urge to do things we shouldn't is by connecting to what we actually should. Because like the Chovis Halavavos says, a little bit of light chases away a lot of dark. So why fight the dark when you could just increase light? Yes, you need Gershon. Yes, you need to drive away negativity. But we do that by connecting to the positivity. That leaves less space for negativity. If you look throughout Igros Kodesh, you see this genre of responsa from the Lubavitcher Rebbe several times, where you'll have a young student, let's say an adolescent, writing to the Lubavitcher Rebbe about certain youthful sins he had done that he feels terrible for, that he feels guilty about, and it's constantly haunting him and breaking him apart. And he's having trouble protecting himself. And he's asking for some sort of tikkun, some sort of remedy. And the Rebbe's reply is Hesach Hadas, which means divert your attention to something better. Find something better. Find something else better to do. That doesn't mean the problem isn't real, but it means there is a part of you that's even more real. Cherish that so there's less space for the problem. We should connect with Aharon, and our Aharon, al pi Aharon, should fuse our Gershon, should infuse, and empower our ability to protect the Jewish people. And it should be with love, with passion, with goodness, with kindness. And we should finally get out of this desert and finally make our way into the promised land. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.